Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 6, Episode 19 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on November 20th, 2023, and this is the closest thing we got to Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. This is our Thanksgiving episode. Turkey Day is upon us. We have a turkey outside that's like an inflatable called El Turco. His name is Tomas El Turco Turkington, and he was a hardened member of the Gobblers up until he had like some life-changing events, and now he's a children's celebrity. So, we feel like we should represent El Turco in anything about Thanksgiving or fall time stuff. I don't know. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the Connecticut Valley Brewing Campers Maple Stout. It's a 5% ABV maple syrup stout. It is by Connecticut Valley Brewing Company, and they don't have any words on this. It is made with Hydeville purple maple syrup from Sugar Shack, which I don't know what any of that is. But if you go to HydevilleSugarShack.com, I'm sure that you could order some of their maple syrup.
That's such a sentence. Maple syrup from the Sugar Shack.
Anyways, you've had a few of these, a few sips of this, not a few of the drinks.
Mm-hmm.
So
no,
what do you think?
I really like this. Primary profile is maple syrup and coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, the alcohol is present. It's a little bit bitter after the sweetness goes away. But frankly, it's a really good dark stout. Like very strong chocolate notes and coffee notes. And, when I say chocolate, I mean like real, 90% cocoa sort of chocolate.
Dark chocolate kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, with that maple syrup on top, that is really good.
I also get a little bit of stone fruit in it, which you've got a different shaped glass, so you may not get out of it. I didn't get that the first time I drank it, but I was also eating this with chili around a campfire, well, close to a campfire. I was drinking this with chili that I was eating. Should correct that. I wasn't actually eating this and pour it in the chili. But I think the chili could have masked some of the stone fruit flavors too.
Yeah, I'd say I'm not sure I'd nail it down to stone fruit, but it's definitely like a fall fruit. Like, it's not like a berry. It's not light. It's like an aged apple or something like that.
I mean, I could see that. The reason I say stone fruit is just because it's got that darker, it's sweet, but it's not like a light sweetness like you get from like a mango or something like that, which I guess mango might be no, mangoes aren't stone fruits, but like something that's got like a pit in it, like a tart cherry or something like that.
Yeah.
A big plum, something like that. Actually, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. Really dark purple plum that's very juicy, that kind of, and it's just a very slight hint of it, like right at the, so like you drink, you get the sweetness from the maple syrup, and then you start getting that chocolate, right? Like it kind of comes in, and then the chocolate turns into the bitterness of the coffee, and as it starts to come back up on the end of the flavor, you just get that slight, it's like another return of the sweetness or something like that.
Yeah, there definitely is. I'm not sure I'd nail that as stone fruit, but like that description of the flavor profile is accurate.
Yeah. So really good. Drink it around a campfire if you get a chance to, because it's pretty awesome like that.
I mean, this is just a pretty good dark ale in general. Like, I wouldn't put it quite with a breakfast stout because it's not quite creamy enough for that. But I mean, you could have this at breakfast.
Yeah, I don't think that they intended for it to be a breakfast stout, though.
No, I don't think they did. I'm just saying, like, in that scope of drinks, there's certain things that, like, I would only have this in the morning. Where this is like I would probably predominantly have this in the evening, but I can have it in the morning.
I could see me having this. So with pancakes, definitely. This is more of like a pancake stout, I think, in many ways. It doesn't taste like pancakes. That's not what I mean. But like a pancake adjacent stout, like something you'd have with that, or French toast or something like that. If you were having that like for dinner, or I could even it went really well with the chili. It brought out like a sweetness that you don't normally get with things like that. It was awesome.
Yeah, and frankly, like it would be good to include in a chili because I always put a little bit of beer in my chili, and I go for a little bit of a sweeter chili. I do like mild Italian and sausages instead of hot Italian. So like that would fit in pretty well.
I agree. I think if you're making chili like that, this would be a good one to include. Um, just overall, one of those like kind of beers that I drink and I have around. I think I'd keep a stock of this. I might even try to like make something that's similar to it at some point in time. So yeah, two in a row. Go out and get them. Very well made.
Yeah.
Hits the flavor profile that it says it's got on it. What more could you ask for? I mean, we're kind of winning here. We're going to see what happens on our last beer of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's going to be good because I've had that one before. So I'd be really surprised if it isn't.
Yep, there you go.
So let's talk about frenemies, Google and Apple, and their search deal. Now, normally we don't get into like the politics of things, and there's a little bit of politics involved here. I don't really care about the politics of this. I think it's fascinating the way that Google has stayed on top has not been by having a superior product, which is oftentimes the way that things like that happen. And for a while there, they did. They had a better search algorithm. They had some better things like that. But instead of innovating or trying to like push themselves further, they pay people like $18 billion to like not create their own search engine, which, I mean, if you look at Google's assistant and you look at Apple's assistant, Siri versus, you know, the one that you just, you know, call from saying okay and then the G word, right?
Yeah.
None of them really nailed that.
No.
You know.
No, I was actually reading a great article not too long ago about that. They built these platforms with this idea behind like continuous monetization because you would be using it to buy products and you would download all these apps for it that could have like ads and things like that. And the average person really didn't go for that.
No.
You know, I've had an Alexa in my house for, I mean, about as long as I've had my kid, I guess like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I've ever done anything other than ask for the weather and set timers and
Yeah.
alarms and stuff like that. You know, little notes or reminders to myself. I don't want to buy anything for, I'm not ever going to buy an app for my Alexa.
Or buy anything through it. You're not going to tell it, hey, you know, whatever, buy me a bag of jelly beans or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give it my payment information. And I don't know really anybody who does. I know a bunch of people who have them and use it to different extents, like you do a lot of home automation through yours, but I don't think you're saying, hey, hey, G word, go buy my groceries for me.
No, definitely not. It's like, hey, turn on the lights. Hey, set a timer.
Yep, exactly.
Hey, my hands are full, you know, turn on some music, or hey, you know, whatever, because it is useful for those things.
Yep.
And I think, you know, we've gotten used to having those things around, so we don't think about how it would be useful for that anymore. You know, after 10 years of having those sorts of things, but it never became conversational, which was kind of the way that it was played to be.
Yeah.
I know that is not the topic that we were talking about, but it is a good way of like kind of exhibiting this is not a technically superior product.
Yeah, exactly. None of these were what they thought they would become when they built the product. And, you know, in a lot of ways, Google's done that with, I think, most things they've acquired. Because, you know, I don't think the original developers of Google are still around. They got bought out, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong on that. But, you know, their claim to fame was they had the best indexing and they had the best search queries.
Yeah.
Like you could find stuff very quickly, very accurately.
The original search engine and the indexer, I think, were two separate products, and they were bought by Google. Because Google was looking at doing a search engine, and so they had something, but then they bought some code, and they also bought the indexer kind of thing. And that became Google's original product. And then, like with the advertising platform, I think they bought one of those too.
Yeah, you know, that early day stuff I'm a little shady on because I was like 10. But
right.
you know, ultimately what it comes down to is nowadays Google really isn't the best search engine in terms of I searched for something and I got exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
How many things are like SEO optimized and placed on higher queues because they're paying revenue to get into the higher queues and stuff like that. You know, there was a day when like the first page of if the first page of Google didn't have it, nobody could find it.
Right.
Like the chances you found what you were looking for on the second and third page was minuscule because it was so good at finding you exactly what you wanted. But nowadays, I can try and Google something really simple with way more information than I would normally have to give. Like this video game, this topic about this video game, like on this platform.
Right.
And I mean, I'll maybe have to scroll 20, 30 things to find what I want.
And generally, like if you're looking for a text article, like say I do this all the time with making like mead.
Mm-hmm.
I get like 15 brew tubers
Yep.
that come up first because they want you to watch something on YouTube.
Exactly. You'll get something like that, or you get all of these paid websites that
Right.
are either locked behind a subscription or they're, you know, doing something like that. And it's like, oh, hey, come join our community so you can go see what this person said on our forums. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, no, that's not what I want. I want you to take me to something like a Reddit or a free blog that's talking about this thing. And it's hard. It's hard to find those. I mean, even a lot of times their video suggestions aren't even accurate.
No, they're not. It's with the introduction with the introduction of the large language models, those LLMs that are supposedly like AI that aren't really intelligent. They're at best, you know, these kind of specific intelligences. I don't think they're really virtual intelligences anymore, like, you know, kind of what's described. And we've talked about this before. You know, we didn't really have an AI until recently, and these are still very specific intelligences. They're not really like actual artificial intelligence or general intelligence, which we would think of as, you know, like artificial intelligence.
Well, you know, I think there's a good parallel that can be drawn there because, you know, things like the public models of ChatGPT have all fallen apart. They're way less accurate now because of how much learning they've done from people and then trying to push particular sources of knowledge and stuff like that. And same thing's happened to Google.
Yep.
If you want an opinion about a topic that's maybe not the most common, like you want to say, I don't want how this thing is healthy for me. I want how this thing is unhealthy for me. Because there's tons of foods and products that are like that, where it's like, you know, spinach is a good example. Spinach is full of a lot of vitamins. Spinach is in many ways very healthy for you.
Really great for you if you have certain things that are good for you.
Yeah.
With spinach.
I forget the exact chemical, but it's like taurine or something like that. It's incredibly high in that, which is very inflammatory, like to an extreme degree.
Yep.
Like a food that is considered high in, again, I'm going to say taurine, but that might not be the chemical I was looking at.
It has a lot of purines in it too.
Yeah, not the purine, because the purines are issues, but only for like people with particular medical conditions.
With like gout or something, which that's why spinach is a problem for me.
Yeah,
I have it every now and then.
Yeah, but like these taurines or whatever they're called are just flat out inflammatory. Your body can handle about 200 milligrams of this stuff a day. That's how much your kidneys can get out of you. And a small serving of spinach, like literally a half a cup of raw spinach, and most people would not consider half a cup of raw spinach a serving of spinach.
Yeah.
Most people are having like a big spinach salad or something like that. That's got 600 milligrams.
Yep.
And like another this is really high in taurines, you should maybe be careful, is something like beetroot. I don't know, what are they? Not the roots, the leaves, the beet stems, and those are 100.
Yeah,
like 100's already incredibly high. Spinach is like 500 to 600. So like for certain people, hey, maybe spinach isn't that healthy. But if you search like spinach unhealthy, oftentimes you don't even get the unhealthy. You get the actual healthy articles.
Right.
And even then, it's hard to find that research, even though it's there. Because again, so many things are search engine optimized, and there's so many health places who are going to write, here's one of our top superfoods, go eat spinach, that it just overwhelms that algorithm, I guess, or however that works. So, but you go hit another search engine, you can find it.
Yep.
because they're not receiving as much money from things being optimized or paying for top slots. You know, that still really irks me that you can just pay for your website to be the first result on Google.
Yep.
Like those first couple slots now are based off of who's paying Google the most and not who has the most accurate information.
And they don't even hide it with like or show up like it's like ad anymore or anything like that. It is literally just like ad, then first slot. And oftentimes the ad and the first slot are the same thing.
Yeah.
I think the worst part here is Google and Apple like trading money back and forth to like get each other to that. This kind of goes back to this thing that I had like earlier. Google used to be the company that said do no evil. Apple never really said that. Like, but they had like some things where they had some ethics at one point in time. And now both companies talk about being green and all this other stuff, but really what they're doing is they're driving innovation in a way that seeks profit and not that betters the world.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of problems with that.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they're doing to YouTube. I mean, they're I have a YouTube Premium because I use their music service.
Yep.
So I don't normally notice ads, but I've started instead of swapping computers at work on my lunch, I'll just get off the corporate network, get on my home network, and watch my YouTube videos there. But I don't sign into my account because I don't want like my personal logins and stuff saved to my work computer. So I'll start seeing these ads, and it's like, man, I'm watching a 10-minute video, and there's just ad after ad after ad. And this isn't the like ones that people place in themselves, because you can see those normally on the bar. This is just their new ad platform. And it's like, what is this? I was watching, we pay for some streaming. I think it's Amazon Prime. Like we pay for Prime, and I'm sitting down, I'm watching a movie, and there's commercials in it.
Right.
And it's like, why are there commercials in my movie that I'm streaming as part of a service I pay for?
Yeah, because it's not free with Prime anymore. It's free as a like with ads with Prime.
Yeah.
Or free like that's the same problem I had with Hulu, and that's the same problem I have with services like not Spotify, even though Spotify does it on their free account. What is the other one that's just like a radio station that anyways, there's another music service that's been around for forever, and you know, my wife Venus loves it, and
not Spotify.
It's not Spotify. It's anyways, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Drawing a blank right now, but that's the same sort of like concept here, right? It's seeking profit, and look, there's a balance. I don't want to be like one of these people that is, well, you can't have, like, you should never have profit. You should never make money, anything like that. But there's a certain point where you've made so much money. You've become Nintendo or Disney or whatever. You've made so much money that you literally can't fail at this point. You could make whatever. You can make Mario an open like thing, and anyone could use Mario in anything and still have enough money to run for like 100 years and develop games and do whatever, make movies or whatever, and run your theme parks and do all these other things. And literally you're just trying to make line go up instead of saying, you know what, we've got enough, let's make world go better. You know, that's a like kind of place where you're really not bringing other people up. You're saying things like, we want to be a green company, we want to do this, we want to do that, but you had something so brilliant. The thing that made you successful was so awesome, and you're paying your competitor who can't get this stuff right.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid that they'll do something better than you are now because you suck so bad. Because all you can think of is how to get profit.
Yeah. It's like, I'd rather, if I'm paying you $15 billion for maybe your search engine, I make $20 billion off of doing that. So like, that still nets me money. So I'm going to do it. You know, and it's not even just these big companies. I was reading through, there's been some controversy with Mr. Beast recently. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I don't really follow that generally, but I've heard that he like has overreached a little bit and done some things, and like his food thing had some controversy around it.
Oh yeah, like his restaurant was like hit or miss. It was one of those first, like whatever they call them, the dark kitchens or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, he recently took a bunch of money and went to Africa and built a bunch of wells. And that's not, I don't think anyone would say that's a bad thing.
No.
He just went and provided clean water to tons of people. But he was getting chewed out by a particular charitable organization. It's like, you didn't really do this the way you're supposed to do it. You know, there's like best practices for this and you didn't follow them. Just for it to come out that the charity, Terraman, a new one, who they make their money donating money and water and stuff to Africa, only give about 20% of their money to charity.
They wanted him to give the money to them, and then they would give the money. They
would keep 80% of it, and then they would go build one well instead of the, like, I forget how many he made. But like that's so prevalent almost everywhere in our society nowadays.
See, I hadn't heard about that. I kind of like, even though I don't necessarily. Jimmy, the guy that does Mr. Beast, is from North Carolina. I don't love everything he does, but then he does things like that, and I'm like, you know, he's at least like, he'll get wealthy and then use his money to do something good, even if it's just for a small number of people. He at least is trying.
Yeah, and people, I don't know. I'm kind of the same way. I don't watch his videos, but I mean, there's been a couple controversies over the year that have made me realize that I think people just like to complain.
Yeah.
Or like they think they can get something out of it if he did what he did. Because I remember he did one thing where he gave like somebody a private jet or like a really expensive car or something like that. Like it was a lot of money. And people were tearing up. It was like, well, now they have to pay taxes on that because that's an asset. And they were poor, so they don't have the money. And then like he just had to come out and be like, guys, when we buy one of these things to give to somebody, we give them the option. They can have the thing
or the money.
And we'll just sell it and get that money for them. And, you know, this is what they choose. Like, at the end of the day, I just gave this, like, person who won this contest $200,000.
Yep.
And you're upset about the method that happened with. Or, like, I think he got a bunch of people hearing aids not too long ago, and people got mad at him.
He also gave a bunch of people eye surgery.
Maybe that's what it was.
Well, he did a hearing aid thing, too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you know, so, like, at least he's going out and uses money for stuff. But it does expose how often, like, there are bad actors, even in what you would consider charitable areas.
Things, yes.
Because they get some percentage of that.
Yeah, exactly. And this isn't necessarily the same thing, but it should be. Like we should be at a point with Google and Apple and Microsoft and all these other companies that like have these statements about how great they are. I mean, IBM, you know, whatever, where they're actually like fulfilling. So in the past, we had these wealthy people. They would make libraries. They would do things. They would, you know, like do all these things. Now they were terrible people. I'm not justifying them or like saying the wealthy were great, but they would have some sort of legacy where they would go and they'd be like, okay, how do I do that? And they would do these like public works projects. And a lot of these companies have replaced those wealthy people because their board of directors are now that. So there's no like one wealthy person that's trying to do this thing. And they've also just been like, oh, well, since I'm not in the spotlight and no one really knows who I am, I don't have to do this. I don't have to have a legacy. And so we've kind of lost that pressure for people to do that. And I think it's going to eventually get to a point to where they just have the profit. They have everything. The money's circulating up there. You know, they're paying each other like $18 billion to not do projects.
Yeah.
And there's just poor people in this dystopian future where, you know, nobody really, like the people are working at these companies basically as slaves, not getting paid anything, or they have to pay the company to, like there's a scheme that happens in India with bricklayers where the company provides all the stuff for the people that work there. And so they go into debt to work there, and then they get paid, but what they owe is more than what they get paid every week or whatever. So they actually just end up increasing their debt instead of ever getting out of it. And basically they're free labor for this company to make bricks for whatever. I know that I kind of simplified that down. It's a little bit more complex, but that's essentially like kind of some trajectory that we're going towards with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think we're we're at a crossroads as a nation when it comes down to like the not necessarily profitability, but the value people place into things versus what you actually get out of it.
Right.
Like, I think older generations really valued service in a way that I don't think younger generations do.
No, they.
Like, I'm going to admit to you, if I go to a restaurant, I'm going to that restaurant because I want to eat the food that's at that restaurant. I don't need a 5-star dining experience.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not joking when I say if every restaurant was you walk up to the counter, you place your order, you get your food in a little takeaway bag, and you go home and eat it. I'd probably be okay with that. I'm not sure I need a bunch of waiters and stuff like that. And that's not to say that like those people aren't important. Those people are important because they're people, and they need to have a job, and they need to have something that they're like providing value to. But how many people are stuck in things like retail and food services and stuff like that are ultimately working a job that's making a company money, but they're not doing anything that's really providing value to other people?
I think, though, I know you well enough just to add to that. If you went up to the counter and the person that was working there ignored you for 10 minutes and never acknowledged that you were there, and then when you like kind of said something and they were like, what do you want? The customer service would matter to you in that moment.
Yeah, but that's different. I don't mean like quality of service provided. I mean the quantity of the service. Like, I don't need a waiter who comes and checks on me every 10, 15 minutes. I'm happy to grab my food, sit down, eat it, and leave. I'll pour my own drink if you've got a fountain or something like that. Like when I walk into a retail store, I don't need a bunch of associates standing in every section to answer questions for me. It's stuff like that. And those people exist because the older generations really wanted that. And that helped drive profit into the company and stuff like that. But those also used to be better jobs. Nowadays, the person standing in the clothing section to answer your question about your clothing is not making enough money to live and is miserable.
So that was going to be my next thing. I also know you well enough that you would rather pay $10 more for whatever that product is so that that person gets a living wage. They are making enough money to live, making a little bit more than enough money to live. Their needs are being met, and they get some of their wants too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm getting at, like, I would much rather that person who's miserable and not making very much money and is not really providing me a service I care about could have a job somewhere else doing something that actually is providing, like, them more money and more, like, value to society. Like, we don't have a lot of the big social projects anymore. Like, we're not out rebuilding every single highway. We're not building new infrastructure. We're not fixing our power grid. We're not doing a lot of these things we could be doing that aren't necessarily profitable but are good for people.
That is very true, and that's kind of what I'm saying too. But also things like food service and stuff like that are important because we don't all have gardens. We don't all have things like that. You need people that like forget the toy store, but you need food and clothing and shelter. And so people that work at like grocery stores and restaurants are necessary to keeping our infrastructure running.
I mean, some of them, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not advocating to get rid of all those positions, but, I think maybe a grocery store is a great example of something that we've almost gone a little bit too far with now, like the self-checkout stuff.
Yeah.
Where there's only ever like one lane open, and the self-checkouts don't work very well because the self-checkouts are made to basically be the cheapest, most money-efficient thing possible, not actually is the service any good. So bring me back my people doing my checkout, but, maybe you don't need to have that person handing out free samples all day.
Exactly.
Because I don't care about your little sausage sample. That person is there purely for you to try to get me to buy a product I'm not interested in.
Exactly. I'm totally on board with you on that. We're essentially saying the same thing at that point. That would go back to the food service thing. You go to a restaurant because you need food.
Yep.
and you go up and you've paid the cashier more money to take your order. That cashier is happier that they're doing whatever they're doing, even though that may not be their life aspiration. They're at least making good enough money that they're not feeling stressed. They're not worrying about their kid. They're not having like that sort of bad day, right?
Yeah.
And then the cook in the back is making good food, not spitting in it and stuff like that. And they're actually like trying because they're getting paid well enough that they're happy and they're not having to like worry. I mean, like you have this like whole chain of things that are there that we've just lost sight of as a society.
Yeah. Too many things, especially in the larger franchises and stuff, is driven purely from profit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of great, videos you can find of people who are like maybe chefs at just like regular mom and pop restaurants who take the ingredients from something like a McDonald's and make something so much better.
Yeah.
Like it's the same ingredients at the same price points, way better food because it's being made by somebody who actually likes being a chef and not, hey, this McDonald's job is all I can get and they're not paying me enough. And, I actually hear McDonald's pays a little bit better now than it used to. But, like,
it's still not that great.
Yeah, I was making minimum wage when I was in food services. I did a sort of okay job, but it's probably the worst job I've ever done in any actual job I've had because it was all about, hey, I need this person here in this kitchen. Oh, you want training? That costs money.
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I made a batch of Chick-fil-A chicken. I just totally effed it up.
Yep.
Because they didn't teach me how the machines worked very well, and they didn't teach me how to like batter the chicken. And that was my problem. Is it's not battered. You basically get this big liquid pouch and you get a powder pouch, and I was like, okay, mix it together, make a wet batter. And I was trying to batter them. That's not what they do.
Yep.
You're supposed to have a whole nother container that I didn't even know was in the kitchen or where they were putting it to put the buttermilk thing in. And then you do that and then you dredge it.
Yep.
So, I can tell you, I worked in that little food court in like 5 or 6 different restaurants and none of them gave me more than a 15-minute introduction. And I was working with things that could have killed me if I used them wrong.
Yep.
That was not a fun job.
And a regular Chick-fil-A establishment, not that I'm defending them, but for all intents and purposes is reported to be like kind of better than that. They
the ones that are owned by a franchise do a lot better. Yeah.
They do better. They have standards and stuff like that. So not necessarily disparaging that. I mean, it's got its other problems, right?
Yeah, I'm not against the brand, but I'm just saying like a lot of fast food runs that way.
Yes.
Where you are a very replaceable employee, that you exist to be a body because they haven't found a way to automate it yet. And they really don't care how much you're making, and they really don't care if you're happy.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Even at places like that are a little bit better, because I could hear people making that argument. This is a little bit far away from where we started with Google and everything like that, but it's the same sort of principle. These companies are insanely profitable, and they've just lost the plot. Like, I mean, the really terrible person of Henry Ford, who by all intents and purposes, from all things that are said about him, he was very prejudiced. He was not a very nice person, knew that in order for him to remain profitable, he had to take care of the people that worked for them because they were also his customers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of it. Like, if your customers aren't alive, who is eating your food?
Yep.
And the idea that you're just like, I'm just going to get what I can today. I'm just going to get as many searches as I can today, and I'm just going to make as much profit and move on is so short-sighted. It is stupid. I hate when executives do that. There's a couple of times that I've wanted to just like yank a knot in somebody that told me something like that. But it is very true that that's kind of where these mindsets come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in another dystopian future, Microsoft is acquiring all the video game companies. And on Friday the 13th of October, it is a day of hope and nightmares because Blizzard, which was already part of Activision and had like things like the Cosby Suite at BlizzCon, which is terrible, is now part of Microsoft. So is that better? Like, do we actually get like back to having like good games from them, or is it going to be all microtransaction run corporate BS that barely runs on anything because they don't have any testers anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think in all honesty, it's not going to get any better.
Yep.
You know, Blizzard's been in decline for quite a while. Activision's been in decline. Microsoft has not been doing that great in terms of some of its first-party titles. It lost a lot of its big franchises, or people don't care about them anymore. I really think GTA 5 ruined gaming for like big AAAs. Not necessarily because of what GTA 5 was, but because it struck at a very interesting time with a very interesting feature set that got people back into large community gaming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people did not play GTA 5 for the last, almost 10 years or something.
Yep.
It's been out forever.
But they've been playing GTA 5 online.
They've been playing GTA 5 online and all the maps that like people play.
Yep.
But a lot of, I think, game studios don't look at it from that direction, where it's like, we built a tool set for people to play together again, and people loved it. They look at, man, look at how many shark cards get sold.
Yep.
Look at how many people buy cosmetics. Look at how many people do this. And they're now looking at those revenue streams, you know, salivating at that idea of profit, and they're making more games like that. But what they don't realize is the reason GTA 5 was so successful was because it was the only thing doing that.
Yep.
If you wanted that type of like multiplayer shooter world experience where you could just like be yourself but also be with other people, that didn't really exist before. Not in like the current generation of consoles. You know, MMOs filled that slot before, but MMOs have kind of not been trending up. More people want to play things on console in that type of like relax on the couch situation. Like the MMO market's not tanked, but it's, you know, before, if you wanted that experience, you had to do it in MMO.
Yeah, or you had to do it on a PC. There are MMOs like Elder Scrolls Online that have crossplay, and they are on console and PC. Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah, but not really at that. They were not as widely available at that time that GTA 5 came out. You know, but that's a good example. Like, people can go to Elder Scrolls Online and get a similar like fantasy experience now. You're not gonna lock people in like GTA did, because the other thing about MMOs is people don't really give them up.
Yep.
If you played WoW for 8 years, even if you stop, you're probably gonna go back. I played RuneScape Classic forever and loved it. I was talking to our buddy Thomas, and he was like, man, I've been thinking maybe I'd want to play that again. I was like, me too. We should ask Joe and see if all three of us should just like start playing it.
RuneScape
and
Classic.
questing together.
Yeah, or EverQuest, or whatever one of those like older games are that we all have some sort of nostalgia for.
Yeah, exactly.
Although this made me think, because you were talking about this when we were talking about Microsoft. You said earlier in this episode that you haven't bought a first-party title in a while. You did buy Starfield.
I did. Yeah, so that's the only one I've bought, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to make that disclaimer.
Yeah. But, you know, even then, I don't... Now, I mean, I guess they technically have been acquired by Microsoft, but they were making the game before. I don't consider Bethesda one of the big top dogs.
But they
make good games, and they're certainly not small time. Like, they're not AA. But the point I was trying to make is, like, when you start talking the top 10, the Nintendo, the Sony, the Microsoft,
Sony,
Activision,
Microsoft,
EA.
Activision, EA are the top 5, and then you got Uplay's thing.
You got Epic and
Epic
stuff like
for
that.
Fortnite. But I was thinking of it's not Uplay.
Ubisoft.
Ubisoft. You got Ubisoft, and but I do think if you're talking about the top 10, I think Bethesda is in the top 10.
Really? I don't know. I don't think so, because you have to think. You know, you've got Capcom, you've got Konami, you've got.
Okay, so while Capcom and Konami are still up in there, I think that like Bethesda is in the top 10, because I can't think of another one that exists that isn't one of those. So like if I take Bethesda out, I still have 9 slots. I was counting them on my fingers. So I think Bethesda still is in the top 10.
I mean, maybe I'd argue people like Take-Two are probably larger than them, or BioWare, if BioWare's really doing much anymore. But we'd have to sit down.
But BioWare is not a game publisher.
That's true. Oh, of course, you know, at that point, yeah, if you're talking like not Bethesda. You're talking ZeniMax.
Yeah.
ZeniMax might be up
Sorry,
there.
ZeniMax was who I was thinking of, not
Yeah.
not Bethesda. Bethesda is the game developer.
Mm-hmm.
ZeniMax is the publisher, but they're essentially the same company in many ways.
Yeah,
'Cause
they've
they're
got
very
they've
tied
got
together.
strong relations.
But now they're Microsoft. So
yeah, now they're Microsoft. So I do think there's something to be said that we're really pushing towards this continuous monetization model that I think is the reason indie game keeps getting a larger and larger chunk of game sales. Is because it's hard nowadays in the AAA world to buy a game for $60 and that's all you're expected to pay.
Well, I've spent $20 on Vampire Survivors across 3 platforms, roughly. And I love playing that game. I just sit down, I play it for like 30 minutes, I have a blast. I can play it on just the only thing it doesn't have is cross save across all the things that I've got. I don't mind paying, an extra $3 if like I had a Vampire Survivors cross save like connection or something like that, or like just a PC, kind of thing. I would be all about that. That would be great, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. There's a lot of money that goes into video games nowadays. That I think it's the same thing that we were talking about before. Like, how much money does a AAA game cost nowadays?
Yeah.
In terms of like cost to get to
Millions of
market.
dollars.
Oh yeah, it's tons of millions. I mean, and it's all this super high fidelity graphics. At the end of the day, they're not really improving.
No.
If we're being very objective, you can take a game from 2 or 3 years ago and a game that came out this year, and they don't look that different.
Nope.
Not in the scope of the millions of dollars in difference to like make the game. And
the worst part is generally the developers aren't paid that well.
No, they're not. It's a terrible industry.
Where does all the money go?
It all goes into engine fees as companies paying other companies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Or like Starfield would be a good example of that. Like Bethesda, I guess for fear they'd mess it up, hired like 16 companies to help on their game.
Yep.
The credits are crazy long because there's just like this game company made this feature, this game company made that feature. And like that's at least going over to people, but a lot of this is like engine fees.
But it's going to that company. It's not necessarily going to people. It's going to the
true.
company.
I mean,
and the company may not pay those people very well that are working on it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they are. The industry is very famous for not really compensating people well, which is why I didn't really get into it. Even though I had skills, I was doing some indie game work. I never wanted to go AAA, even though I got an offer once. Because it's just a nightmare. They take advantage of you want to be working on video games to not pay you what you would in almost any other sector.
Yeah. So, speaking of dystopia, Omegle shuts down. I'm just going to make that as a footnote. I'm just going to leave that there. Eventually, you become the villain so much that you just can't sustain yourself anymore. And I think that's probably where all these things are going at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also think that just their model became very dated, and they didn't ever find a way to break back into the market.
Yeah, I mean, it was a useless site that did useless things. It shouldn't have existed. It just is like an internet meme at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was on paper such a great concept. The idea that, hey, you can have a chat room where you can actually just be like, you just have someone there and your webcam's on, you can talk to them and you can learn about people. That's great. But then you release on the internet.
Yep.
And the internet's never going to use your tool the way you want them to use your tool.
Never.
So I'll be honest, when I saw they had shut down, I was like, oh, they just now shut down? I assumed that we had lost them a while ago.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is our Thanksgiving episode was all about the death of something. I mean, because that's what fall is like. Things are dying, they're going back, and then you have winter where everything is dead. And when we come back in spring, it'll be about rebirth. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, look, it's Thanksgiving. Be thankful for the people you're spending time with.
Yep.
Those people matter more than products.
Yeah.
And just try and remember that.
Yep.
That no matter what happens to those companies, the people around you what really matter.
Yes, absolutely. Have fun with the people that you're with. Drink a couple of good beers. Maybe make some good beer or mead or cider or wine. Have a good time. And then when it comes back around to it, don't worry about work so much.
Yeah.
Anyways, this has been season 19. This has been season 6, episode 19 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. Slated to come out on November 20th, 2023. It is our Thanksgiving episode, so happy Thanksgiving. and we'll catch you next time